Hi, welcome to Fuel Retailing 101. My name is John Eichberger. I'm the Executive Director of the Transportation Energy Institute. We put together this four-part module to help professionals within the convenience and fuel retailing industry who may not operate in the fuel sector exclusively or very intimately, better understand what's happening in that sector. Fuel retailing is a major component of the convenience store industry, so we want to take some time to walk you through a couple of different components so you have a better understanding of what maybe the people you're working with in the industry are facing, what they're concerned about, and what the future might be for the fuel retailing sector. First of all, who is the Transportation Energy Institute? We were founded as the Fuels Institute back in 2013 by NACS. We are an independent research organization comprised of a wide diversity of stakeholders. Our board of advisors, who sets our research agenda and the strategic direction for the organization, is comprised of more than 60 companies. You can see some of the logos of those companies on the screen. They range from major oil companies to biofuel companies to electric vehicle companies and everybody in between. So we really do have a good perspective of what's going on in the market. Personally, I started working for NACS back in 2000. So I've been involved in the convenience fuel retailing sector for almost a quarter of a century. So what I want to walk you through is kind of what's really happening in the market. But to do that, we need to start off with who is the fuel retailing industry. So the convenience store channel has 152,000 sites in the United States. Of those, 120,000 sell fuel. Now, when you look at the screen here, what you see is these companies sell about 80% of the gasoline in the country. So when you think about who is the fuel retailer, it really is the convenience store industry. Now, one of the things that's really important to understand is the diversity of ownership. 90,000 sites are owned by companies that own just that one store. That is the biggest chunk of the industry. So you're dealing with a lot of small mom and pop retailers. On the other end of the spectrum, the next biggest chunk are those companies that have more than 500 stores. When we walk through a lot of this, you're going to see how that kind of plays into some of the discussions and strategies that they may employ to their fuel retailing business. Now, the reason we focus on fuels, and I've been focused on fuels since 2000, is because it is usually more than 2/3 of the sales of a convenience store. Now, that sales component does not necessarily translate into a profit component. As you see on the screen, fuels only account for about 38% of pre-tax profit. All that being said, when we survey customers, did you go into the store last time you bought gas? Sometimes they say, 30% to 40% say, yeah, I went inside the store. This year it's funny, we did a survey and 58% of customers said, yeah, I went in the store when I bought gas. That's not consistent with what we've had in the past. So we really kind of say it's around 40% of your fuel customers go inside the store, but think about that. If those fuel customers were not coming to the store, what would that do to in-store sales? And what would it do to overall profitability of the store? So we need to be thinking about the fuel business from a strategic perspective and what it means for the long-term viability of the sector. Here's the historic thing. You take a look at the industry mix. It's consistent in that 2/3 area. But the key thing is when it's gotten higher, it's because fuel prices went higher. And that's why we want to look at volume, we want to look at price volatility, we want to look at profits as well and margins, because that's so important to understanding what's really going on in the market. Fuel retailers are extremely susceptible to price swings at the pump, and so are their customers. And that has a major impact on how they go to market and how they actually turn a profit. Now, what's really important, I mentioned that 40% of customers typically go inside the store. We did a survey beginning of 2024 and asked customers, the last time you bought gas, did you go inside the convenience store? And 58% said yes. And of those, 53%, the main reason to go into the store was to buy gas. And you see the categories here why they went to the store. But this just indicates what a huge traffic driver the fuel retailing island is for these convenience stores and driving customers to their site. Now, when they went inside the store, we asked them, what did you do? And the vast majority of them bought a drink or paid for gas at the register or bought a snack. Buying a drink, buying a snack, using the restroom is a consistent theme. So when they stop off to get gas, they're going inside the store to do something. That is a critical opportunity for the convenience retailers to capitalize on that customer's visit and generate additional in-store sales, which, as you saw before, is the primary source of profit for these companies. Now let's take a little look at gas prices, because it's such an important factor. When I was representing convenience retailers in Congress and the media, one of the biggest things I had to do was explain gas price volatility. Because when prices go up, customers get upset, politicians get upset, they look for a scapegoat. The retailer on that side is also like, man, prices are going up. And I'll show later, they lose money when prices go up. They make money when prices go down, but they encounter massive customer distrust and dissatisfaction when prices go up. So let's see where we've been. You take a look at the last couple of years. COVID had a major impact on gas prices, as we know, dropped down to the dollar range for a short period of time. It also translated into major margin enhancement for retailers. It's because when the wholesale price went so low, they were able to maintain prices at a competitive level, which generated more profit. But when you look at this after COVID, prices went back up. And this is where we've been the last 2 years, 3 years. But let's take a look at a longer viewpoint, because one of the things that's really important is we can't look at gas prices in a narrow time window. We have to look at it over a period of time. We like to call it a market cycle. I'm going to look back several market cycles to have a better understanding, going all the way back to January 2006. And you see the yellow line there is the average when the price is above, obviously. That is a high-priced market. Prices drop below that, it's lower, and you see major volatility in the time frame. The Great Recession 2008, oil price crash around 2014, COVID, and more recently geopolitical instability. That's Ukraine, that's the Middle East, that's Iran. So many things, uncertainty factored into the price of oil, which is the #1 contributor to the price of gasoline at the pump. But it's really important to keep in mind that there is a consistent pattern typically, but there's massive inflections in the market. And so this is a kind of a clustered map or chart, but it shows every year going back to 2006 on an individual line. What I want to point out is typically what we see on a 12-month cycle is in the first few months of the year, gas prices start to tick up around February. And that's as refiners are going through maintenance and turnarounds, when they're getting ready to produce a cleaner blend of gasoline required for summer months, and when demand starts to pick up. And so you typically see an increase in fuel prices leading into Memorial Day. It usually stables out after that and then slowly goes down in the fall. We've had some notable changes, notable variations to that. You take a look, I've highlighted COVID, oil price crash, and the Great Recession, where the pattern didn't play out. Now, the pattern can sometimes be more extreme than other years, but overall you see this up, stable, down pattern throughout the year, whereas in the winter months around the New Year time, that's the lowest price typically, and then around Memorial Day is when the highest price hits. And it really does have to do with supply, demand, and regulations. All those things combine to affect that. And so understanding those patterns may help you understand a little bit what the retailer is going through. Because as that price is going up, customers are getting angry, news is starting to pay attention, they're starting to feel some pressure, yet they still need to cover their costs. And they still need to post a competitive price to get customers to their store. What I'll show a little bit later is customers will leave a retailer for a couple pennies a gallon. And so that retailer is very conscious about making sure that the price they're posting is competitive every single day. And I mentioned before that crude oil is the #1 component of gasoline. Department of Energy tracks the composition of retail gasoline prices, and 60% approximately is oil. 16% is taxes. This is going all the way back to 2006 average. Sometimes more, sometimes less. But what I want to point out is distribution and marketing is kind of a catchphrase, kind of like your junk drawer in your kitchen. It includes pipeline operations, terminal operations, wholesale distribution operations, retail operations, covers credit card fees, 12.7%. All of that retail profit is baked into that 12.7%. So it's a pretty big chunk of cost built into that smallest component of the retail price. So retailers are really price takers. They have very little flexibility to change the price at their pump relative to the costs that are laid into the product coming into their store. And that leads us to who owns the station. It is really important to understand that just because a retailer is selling a particular brand of gasoline, they're not necessarily affiliated with that brand other than a supply relationship. And so what we've found is about 5% of the stations in the country are run and owned and operated by the major refining companies. Yet 55% or more are branded. They're selling the same brand as that major oil company, major refiner. I like to equate it to this. If you go to McDonald's, you're going to buy Coca-Cola. They have a contract with Coca-Cola. You go to Taco Bell, you're going to buy Pepsi. They have a contract of supply. These retailers have a contract to supply with their refiner partner as well. Now, that's not necessarily everybody. You see here, I posted the top 15 stores, chains according to CSP in 2023, and you see that not all of those are major oil, and because they don't own and operate. And so it kind of gives you an idea of where the ownership is. And it's important to know because a branded retailer using the fuel of a major refiner has a very different economic model than an independent retailer who's flying their own brand of fuel. So what are the differences? Why would somebody go branded or unbranded? So if I'm a retailer and I'm looking to start a company, or I'm looking to secure my fuel supply, I may go to a major brand and sign a long-term contract. They used to be 20 years. Now they're usually 5 to 10 years. But the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to be affiliated with their brand. I want to benefit from their marketing dollars. I want them to help me improve the look and feel and appearance of my store to be consistent with their brand standards. But most importantly, I want to make sure I have supply. So when you have a contract, you have a contract for a certain number of gallons. In the event of a supply disruption, a hurricane, or some other problem that limits supplies, branded contracts are going to be honored first. And they're going to have the least amount of price volatility. Okay, but you still have to comply with your brand standards, and you're going to pay a premium for those benefits. Now, say I want to fly John's Gas and sell John's Gas. I don't go branded, I go independent. So maybe I'm just going to the wholesale market, I'm buying on the spot market, I'm buying uncontracted volumes, or I sign an unbranded contract. Typically my prices are going to be lower. I'm going to be able to set my own brand standards. I don't have to comply with their brand. And I don't have to deal with any type of perception that the refiner brand may invite upon itself based upon quarterly earnings or environmental issues or political issues. I'm pretty much insulated in that. However, if there's a supply disruption, I'm the last guy in line for fuel. My price is going to go up a lot faster. And if there's not enough fuel supply, I may not be able to refuel my truck and refuel my tank. So there's some risk associated with it. That's why you have about a 50-50 split. Some want the risk, some don't want the risk. Some want lower prices, some are willing to pay a little bit more for security and brand support. So what I did is I pulled a market just out of Opus reports I get every week. And this one happens in Bethlehem, Allentown, Pennsylvania. I chose it only because there's so many different brands. There's what, 20, 25 brands on the screen. And what I want to show is the wholesale price can vary by brand. Now I mentioned typically a branded contract is going to be more expensive than unbranded. What I'm showing you here is actually something that's not typical. This is an inverted market where the branded prices are lower than the unbranded prices. Not sure what's going on this particular week. Maybe there was a supply disruption, maybe there was something going on, but unbranded fuel supplies were more expensive than branded, which is, as I mentioned, atypical. Now point out the yellow bars here, the yellow columns are the branded supplies, and the red columns are the unbranded supplies. Now keep in mind where these prices are wholesale. Now the variability isn't that huge, maybe 10 cents, but 10 cents can make a big difference on the street. Now we look at retail price. When I want to point back here, I circled the 3 club stores on the far right. They're in the higher bracket of wholesale prices, which is rare. Usually they're buying big volumes, getting discounts, but at this point in this report, they're paying higher. Retail prices are still the lowest price leader because they have a reputation. And a lot of unbranded retailers or private branded retailers, their strategy is to establish a low price mindset in the customer. So as that way, when the customer looks at the brand, they automatically assume lower price. You see Sam's Club, BJ's, Costco, you think lower price. Typically longer lines, but you see lower price. You also see in this chart here, that doesn't always play consistently. Every single retailer, and I'll talk about pricing strategies in a minute, every single retailer is benchmarking their price against another metric. All right, so we see the retail price here. Now, the wholesale price you pay on this chart and the retail price you charge influences your margin. Now you look here, the lowest margin at a loss, where there's 3 club stores. It's a strategy. They sell memberships. They're willing to take a loss at the pump in order to sell memberships to give people access to that lower price point. Customers are so sensitive to price. Any discount on price is viewed exponentially more valuable than a discount on any other product. But you look here, you see the variability in margins. Everybody's trying to cover their costs and generate some profit, except for those guys selling at a loss. If you're selling at a loss or zero margin, your goal is traffic. Your goal is volume for the club stores that's selling memberships. So it all depends on the customer, on the retailer's strategy and their strategic objectives at the time they're setting the price. So here's where it comes into setting prices, and it can get pretty complicated, but I boil it down to 2 main buckets. One, what's my wholesale price? What did I sell for the gallons I have in the ground today? And what do I have to sell those gallons for in order to generate enough revenue to buy the next truckload that's coming in this afternoon? Keep in mind, wholesale prices these days can change 12 times a day. And so the retailer is going to get a notification, hey, you bought fuel, it was $2.50 a gallon when you picked it up yesterday. Your delivery tomorrow is expected to be $2.70. The retailer now has to decide, okay, I need to sell my fuel for $2.70 plus whatever my other costs are in order to buy the next tanker full. But I have to pay attention to my customers and my competition. So I'm gonna look around and maybe have 5 or 6 stores that I really compete with. I'm gonna look and see what their prices are. And historically, I know if I'm a penny below Jim and 2 cents above Susie, then I'm gonna get the volume of traffic I want. So I might, as a retailer, decide I'm gonna go ahead and cut my margins in order to keep my retail price competitive, to maximize my customer throughput. But that doesn't necessarily cover my costs. I may go into a loss situation for a period of time. But the difference is when the prices are coming down and I bought $2.70 yesterday and tomorrow it's gonna be $2.50, I can hold my retail price competitive and make up that margin, because I may get my delivery today, but Susan may not get her delivery until tomorrow. And so her wholesale price is gonna change. She might be branded with a refiner and pays a premium for a fuel, or in an inverted market pays a discount, whereas I'm paying private branded and I'm paying a different price. So everybody's cost is different. Everybody's supply cadence is different, and that wholesale price is moving constantly. And so it's really a difficult game to try to figure out what is the optimum price to maximize my profitability. Most retailers focus on what's my competitive position in the market. I'll deal with margins and the profitability later, but I cannot sacrifice customer throughput. Again, 40% of my fuel customers come inside the store, I make most of my money. So I can't do anything that's gonna dissuade customers from coming to my store. So how sensitive are customers to price? Well, we've asked them for many years, a variety of questions. One of them is, how much do gas prices affect your feelings about the economy? Fuel prices are posted on 25, 30-foot signs and 2-foot letters. All right, 2-foot numbers. You can shop for the best price at 60 miles an hour without slowing down. And people do, they shop around for the best price. This sign right here is a bellwether for a lot of customers on the economy. 85% of consumers say that gas prices affect their feelings about the economy. Prices are up, the economy is bad. Prices are down, the economy is doing well. Ironically, it's kind of, sometimes it flips, but that's the perception. And so we have to be aware of that. And then they shop around. The number one factor that drives a customer's decision to shop at a particular gas station is price, 70%. That's consistent for the last 10, 15 years. And a big chunk of customers, half of them, will drive 5 minutes out of the way to save 5 cents a gallon, or 10 minutes out of the way to save 5 cents a gallon. Think about that. 5 cents a gallon, they'll drive 5 or 10 minutes out of the way. It's a huge motivation. Now, that's what they say they'll do. It's not necessarily what they do. But then we asked them, do you have a particularly favorite brand? And of those who said yes, 56% said that their favorite brand has the lowest prices. This is not always the case. I actually was talking to a former board member of NACS years ago, and he was a refiner branded operator, and he had no customers in his forecourt. Across the street, another store, they were lined up. And so he walked over and he asked some of the customers, why did you pick this site? Why did you pick this store? And they said, well, they have lower prices. He looked up at the sign. The store that had customers was private branded, but they were priced more than his refiner branded outlet. And so it's this mindset. They were actually paying more per gallon, but their belief was that the private brand was going to be cheaper. And so they went there just out of instinct. So it's a situation that retailers have to deal with, and they have to make sure they're paying attention to customer sensitivities. Now, how do they make money? So there's a couple ways of calculating this. I'm presenting data from the NACS data industry here. NACS looks at break-even pool margin, which is how much do I need to make on my gallons to break even for my entire store. So they're including in-store sales as well as out-store sales, direct store operating expenses and everything here. And they're calculating at about 10.7 cents. I need to make 10.7 cents above my cost to break even across my store. All right, now you take a look here, the red line is at 10.7. Anything below that is you're selling fuel at a loss on that metric. Now, I take a look more focused at the fuel line in itself and looking at the gallon per gallon situation. When I do that, this is a more complicated chart, but using Opus data, the blue line is wholesale price. That's what I paid for the fuel. There's other costs incurred. The red line is the price I charge my customer for. The yellow line is my break-even cost. This is how much I need to sell, how much more I need to sell my fuel for than I paid for in order to break even on that gallon. And the green mountains there are my gross profit dollars. per gallon, cents per gallon. Anything above the yellow line is profit, and below the yellow line is a loss. So that gives you an idea of what the volatility is in profitability. High mountains, a lot of money being made. Low mountains, not as much money being made. Now, I want to point out, when the blue and red lines are going up, they start going up, the mountains go down. As prices go up, profit goes down. Soon as those prices, wholesale and retail, start going back down, look what happened to the profit mountain. It goes back up. This is evidence, what I said before. Retailers lose money on the way up, they make money on the way down because of competitive pressures. Customers don't understand that, but it is the true reality. Retailers like volatility because they can make a lot of money on that downslide. But if it's a prolonged increased price, that's going to have a lot of impact on their profitability and really stretch out their finances and put a lot of stress on their economic situation. So when you're talking to a retailer, if you're in a situation where prices are on the incline, be sensitive to that. They're under quite a bit of pressure to figure out how to manage that. And they're waiting for that price to come down so they can make some profit. So how much money do they make per gallon? Typically, the industry uses a cents per gallon metric, which is the top chart there. And I show that we averaged about 18 cents per gallon. If the break-even's around 17, that's about a penny a gallon, pure profit. I actually think it's better to look at it as a percent, because the price of gasoline is so volatile. Any cent per gallon metric is really relationally important to the retail price of fuel. So the bottom chart here is the same exact data, just plotted as a percent of the retail price. And you see that on average, since January 21, retailers have averaged about 5% margin. Not bad, but also not extravagant that some news media might lead customers to believe. So thinking about it in a percent base, I think, makes a lot more sense. Now, here's what it means for the store economics. We see about 140,000 gallons sold each month. You see the data from Access OI. I took that and broke it down. We're looking at about 400 plus fuel transactions a day. So I want you to think about that. If 40% of them go inside the store, that's 160 in-store transaction potentials. If you can increase that amount, you're going to increase your in-store sales potential. And so that 400 customers is critical. And that's why this pricing strategy and recognition of consumer price sensitivity is so important, to make sure that we are pricing that fuel island at a point that brings customers to the store. So quick summary on Fuel Retailing 101. It's a major category. Fuel price is so important because it leads into fuel demand. And that brand that you fly out front could draw customers, but could also drive customers away. It can improve your economics, but can also jeopardize your economics. So how a retailer decides to secure their fuel supply, whether they want to go with a branded contract or a private branded contract, is going to be really important to the overall profitability and their store operations. Profitability at the pump is not big, a couple pennies a gallon. Recently, it's been much better. When I first started, we were at almost a negative margin situation for years in a row because the price competition was so intense. Today, it's a lot more robust, but still, prices are higher. So we talk about 30 cent per gallon margins, which back in 2005 was unheard of. 30 cent per gallon margins at $5 a gallon is a lot different than 30 cents a gallon at $2 a gallon. And so that's why I say we need to look at the percentage. What is the margin versus the retail price? And that 400 fuel transactions a day. We can talk about 2/3 of sales come from the fuel island, but that number is contingent on fuel prices. 400 customers every day coming to the convenience store. That's the metric that's so important. And that's the metric retailers are trying to protect when they're changing their prices and looking at their competitive position in the market, to make sure those customers are coming to the store on a regular basis, get them inside the store, sell them higher margin items, and really boost that bottom line. So that's the end of Fuel Retailing 101. We're going to go into the next module when you're ready, and we're going to look at fuel demand. We're going to look at retailer concerns and reality. There's a lot of stuff going on in the fuels market that affects the availability, supply, and future dynamics and future viability of the fuel retailing industry. We're going to take a look at that, peel the onion back a little bit, and see where things are. So thank you very much for tuning in. I'll see you next time.